UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. Joining me by video link today, we've got David Scott and Debbie Evans. Welcome to the programme, both. Now, we're going to get kicked off straight away here with the Online Safety Bill, because yesterday that passed its final parliamentary debate, which means it's just waiting for royal assent, which is a formality, of course. Well, what did the government have to say about this? They said this major milestone means the government is within touching distance of delivering the most powerful child protection laws in a generation, while ensuring adults are better empowered to take control of their online lives, while protecting our mental health. And David, I thought that was a very interesting statement, because my first question is who is us? Our mental health. This seems to be suggesting, or it seems to be an acknowledgement from the British government that they were getting pretty stressed about some of the narratives that are going on out there, that their mental health is at risk, and therefore they've got to bring some legislation in to make sure that they are, feeling all right in themselves.
You're suggesting that unregulated truth-telling causes a mental breakdown on the part of the state. You might have a point there, Mike.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's bring Michelle Donnellan on screen. Here's what she had to say. I'm immensely proud of what we've achieved with this bill. Our common sense approach will deliver a better future for British people by making sure that what's illegal offline is illegal online. Of course, whether something's illegal or not, if it's illegal, it's illegal. Offline, online makes no difference. So that really is no excuse for bringing this particular legislation in. Now, Melanie Dawes is in charge of Ofcom, and of course, Ofcom becomes the new regulator for the internet, at least as far as the UK is concerned. Very soon after the bill receives royal assent, she says, we'll consult on the first set of standards that we'll expect tech firms to meet in tackling illegal online harms, including child sexual exploitation, fraud, and terrorism. And of course, these are all the things that they are really focusing on, trying to divert everybody away from the censorship agenda. Let's just remind ourselves what some of the things that this legislation does. It brings in this, that platforms will need to use tools for content moderation, user profile and behavior identification to protect their users, because of course, snooping on people is protecting people. That's what we know. More proactive technology here. Additional provisions have been added to the bill to allow Ofcom to set expectations for the use of these proactive technologies in codes of practice and enforce companies to use better and more effective tools should this be necessary. And of course, the whole encryption situation that we've been talking about over the last number of months is part and parcel of this. We've got criminal liability for senior managers, so it gives Ofcom the powers to demand information and data from tech companies, including on the role of their algorithms in selecting and displaying content, so that Ofcom can assess how they're shielding users from harm. It goes on to say Ofcom will be able to enter companies' premises to access data and equipment, request interviews with company employees, and require companies to undergo an external assessment of how they're keeping users safe. And more on criminal liability for senior managers, because it creates offences for companies in scope and or employees who suppress, destroy or alter information requested by Ofcom. It creates offences for failing to comply with, obstructing or delaying Ofcom when exercising its powers of entry, audit and inspection or providing false information. And it creates offences for employees who fail to attend or provide false information at an interview. And falling foul of these offences could lead up to 2 years imprisonment or a fine. So for the tech companies, it really is backs against the wall time. They don't have much room for manoeuvre here. And of course, one of the things that was removed from the Online Safety Bill as a result of pressure from campaigners and so on was the idea of removing content which is legal but considered harmful. What the government has done instead is to put the onus on the tech companies to define what types of content are acceptable on their platforms, put that in the terms and conditions, and then very stringently enforce those terms and conditions, no flexibility at all. So let's just have a look at some of the key points here. Platforms required to uphold their terms and conditions, as I've said. The other thing that this, of course, does is help usher in digital ID, because in order to keep children safe, we've got to be able to verify their ages. And in order to verify age, you've got to be able to verify your identity. So this inevitably leads towards digital ID. But the other thing that it does, of course, is it has a chilling effect on conversation on online platforms. We've already seen this building over the last number of years, but this is going to take it to the next level, which is going to force people into sort of niche areas And so what it does is it creates, let's call it protest pens. The idea of cross-pollination of ideas that we saw on social media over the last number of years is really being rolled back to the early days of the internet, when, in order to have conversations with people, you ended up going to very narrowly constrained discussion forums on particular topics instead of social media, which is quite broad in context. Now, just to remind everybody about this page on the UK Column website, ukcolumn.org/censored. If you go there and look at the timeline of how we got to this point, it's quite a journey. But David, this is a pretty dangerous situation for everybody. We are now at the point where Ofcom is the regulator, and we now have to wait and see how the form that regulation takes at the end of the day. Where do we go?
The lawyer Graham Smith is quoted here saying, "If the road to hell is paved with good intentions, this is a motorway," referring to this particular bill, now act. And this is the issue. The direction of travel is very clearly towards more and more control over what is said, and there doesn't seem to be any pushback in terms of establishing and securing the principles of free speech along that road. It's only towards less and less freedom, all for the most noble of intentions, of course.
Yes. Okay. And Debbie, let's bring you on screen now and talk about the COVID inquiry, because there seems to be a bit of censorship going on there.
Yes, there does indeed. And my question would be actually to all those that are vaccine injured. I wonder how they're going to feel about the online harms bill. I'm incredibly, I have so much respect and admiration for those with vaccine injuries and the bereaved. And notice this story in the Telegraph that people that have been injured or bereaved by COVID vaccines are having to speak in code online. This includes our very own friends Charlotte from UK CV Family, Charlotte Crichton, Vib, and the Scottish Vaccine Injured. When you go in to look at the article a little bit more, please feel free to freeze the screen, and you can see the kind of abuse and stigma that the vaccine injured and bereaved have been suffering from censorship. I think we're going to be seeing more of the next piece of video in Extra. But just as a snippet, the KC Anne Morris speaking at the COVID inquiry. Let's look.
In addition to their injury and bereavement, those we represent have also experienced a second trauma. A lack of medical knowledge and understanding about the risk and presentation of vaccine injury has left injured people undiagnosed and without treatment. Furthermore, a prevailing institutional mindset within medical bodies and the government has been fixated solely on acknowledging the benefits of the vaccine. This has led to the reporting vaccine injury to feel disbelieved, unheard, and marginalised. Censorship is a very real issue, my lady, for the vaccine injured and bereaved. Their support groups have been shut down by social media platforms, and their experience is censored by the mainstream media. They have to speak in code online for fear of having their only source of support taken away from them. They've faced stigma and abuse for sharing their symptoms in the context of the COVID vaccine, and even being branded as anti-vax for sharing very real and medically proven vaccine injuries. Care must be taken in the inquiry's own examination of the role of social media, and ensure that the inquiry itself doesn't fall into the trap of further disenfranchising those who have experienced vaccine injury.
And also she went on to say that NHS staff who had been vaccine and who were also vaccine injured were being threatened, and they were being bullied and victimised. So we'll be seeing more of that in Extra.
Okay,